Hello and welcome to Orphan Brick. I'm just going to apologize for any issues in this commentary in advance, because this is my 4th time recording this. But yes, today's video is recreating a Soviet rocket concept. Today's is the Vulkan, or Vulkan. If I may have mispronounced it, I'm sorry about that. I could not find a conclusive source on how to properly pronounce it. But yes, this was part of the Energia family of rockets, which includes the Zenit, Energia M, Energia, and Vulkan. And this rocket is not to be confused with any other Vulcans, another one of which was also a Soviet concept. But yes, a Energia derivative. It uses a Energia first stage that's slightly lengthened, and as its second stage, a Energia M core stage, and it has 8 Zenit boosters, which are actually slightly lengthened. I mean, it has an insanely high payload capacity. Now this rocket was meant to replace the N1, and to be able to service any lunar base operations by the Soviet Union. And well, for this video, I decided not to recreate any of the lunar lander or lunar base proposals, because I did not have the time to. We will still be doing something MUN related. There you can see the Zenit boosters detaching Kerbal cross formation, and there goes the fairing, and you can see the pile of hardware we are currently launching. More will be explained later on. And now, this rocket is, as I said, extremely capable, and this payload is nowhere near the actual payload capacity. So we were able to get into orbit using only the boosters and core, or the first and second stages if you're using the proper Soviet-style naming. But we can separate the 2 stages, using some RCS there to get them separated. And we can plot our transmitter injection. And now, I will now elaborate on the payload. It's 4 rovers and 4 relay satellites. And the goal is to get science from varied locations around the MUN. And so, in order to allow for many different locations for the rovers to land, we're going into a polar orbit. Now, you saw me plotting the orbital insertion burn there, which is nowhere near the orbital insertion burn I will actually end up doing, for reasons that will be explained later. And I'm going to comment on how, yes, I'm using a sea-level engine for this stage. However, it's actually a pretty reasonable vacuum engine. It's efficient, and it's not extremely overpowered for this. However, it does only have 2 ignitions, so we need to conserve ignitions as much as possible. Which means I'll actually do a bunch of the mid-course correcting with the RCS. And if for some reason when I tried to correct my trajectory, it wouldn't. Even though I was following the maneuver node, it was not going in the appropriate direction. So I'm plotting our mid-course correction, and I'm again going to plot a orbital insertion. However, again, this is not what I will end up doing for various obvious reasons. But I'm still not going to mention them until they're actually relevant, and we can time warp up to our mid-course correction. Once again, going to mention again, and this is my 4th time recording this commentary. I really want to be over with this, so there might be some mistakes. But yes, you can see my orbital insertion burn, and you might wonder why I'm doing it so strangely. It's because, well, if I did a normal, efficient burn, this would happen, where I would lose contact with the craft, be unable to shut down the engine, and very bad things would occur. And so, to prevent that from happening, this burn will ensure that we're in constant contact with Kerbal for the entirety of our burn. And so, yeah, And we get a nice effect of panning around the craft as we pass over the mountain's North Pole. Also, by the way, if you have an incredibly keen eye, I mention this because nothing's happening right now, you may notice that Kerbal looks slightly different in some of the later shots in this video. That's because I was able to do some changes to Scatera, which was able to get to work with. Basically, by default, JNSQ does not support the latest version of Scatera. However, I found a patch that allows it to support the latest version of Scatera. So yeah, Kerbal will slightly change. Anyways, we just corrected our orbit around the Moon. We can get to deploying our multi-probe rovers. First up is that center rover and the relay satellite beneath it, because the rovers are stacked on their relay satellites. However, I failed to account for the extra size of the antenna dishes and how that will prevent the craft from basically the craft will get stuck on each other. And so, I first detached the rover since it can operate on its own. And by the way, these rovers have RTGs on them, as you can see, so I don't have to worry about deploying any solar panels, and the relays are covered in stacked solar panels anyways. And I'm considering just deorbiting and landing the rover, and worrying about the relay satellite later. And in fact, I've already corrected my control point. However, I decided to free the relay satellite by detaching another one of the probes. And so now the two craft are free, and I can deorbit the first rover without having to worry about potential Kraken issues when I switch back to the main craft. Now I was just aiming for a flattish area between these two mountain ranges. And so this is a pretty normal descent stage. It's just a 2 restock plus fuel tanks and 2 ant engines. This rover is made of a restocked probe core, some of the making history rover wheels, and tons of Tantauris, Blue Dog Design Bureau, and stock science experiments. You can see just the various assortment of parts there. We also have a scanning arm, a whole-cam camera, a scan set, scanner. Just, yeah, all the various scientific goodies. And so yeah, we can now drive across the surface. And it also has something I can never live without when I'm using a rover. It has a toggleable reaction wheel on it. Because with any rover, it is bound that it will tip over at some point. So by putting a reaction wheel on it, it will give the rover the ability to right itself, and you can have an action group to toggle that reaction wheel off and off. Well, off and on. Sorry, I can't speak. Again, this was my 4th time recording the commentary. But just, yeah, first rover a success. Now we can put the relay satellite into a desired orbit, which I did not do any fancy calculations for this. I'm just putting it into a orbit that is different from all the other relay satellites I'll be putting into their orbits. You will hopefully ensure that there's probably going to be at least one satellite in range of every other satellite. Yeah, I'm basically just going with the place random satellites and hope it works method for establishing a communications network. And so yeah, we put it into a pretty nice circular orbit. And I'm just time warping to ensure that the communication stuff will work and there's no unforeseen issues. And there you can see the green call lines. And now we can deploy the various equipment on this. Another magnetometer boom. It's actually not the stock magnetometer boom. It's a modded one. Anyways, enough about the first set of probes. Let's now talk about the second set. All of them are exactly identical, it's just the landing sites and landing methods that will differ. Because, yeah, no, some of these landings will be less than ideal. So, I'm coming down over this northern, this flat area. Getting some nice views from the camera. You can see some pretty interesting looking terrain down there, which will definitely be a target for future rover expeditions. And you can see the dark flat area we're approaching. And so, again, exact same landing stage. And at this point, about 4 kilometers up, I've almost cut off all my velocity. I cut off the engines. And then, I ignite them again, a bit too close to the ground. And we're going still over 50 meters per second, and oh no, that doesn't look good. But the rover lives. Yeah, no. Somehow that small landing stage was enough to just do it was a crumple zone for the rover, and somehow it survived. Of course, we're now going off into some rocks, but again, still unharmed. Somehow the wheels didn't break on it. And yeah, we can get rid of the decoupler, and I checked F3, and yeah, no, there's no damage to it. Which, yeah. I was not expecting that, and I just never tested what would happen if I crushed the rover into the ground at 50 meters per second, but yeah. Now I can get the control points all figured out, and I can get off these rocks. Once the wheels start, once the wheels stop rotating, because wheels in KSP sometimes act for unknown reasons. Yeah, we can now drive across the surface, and you can see the minimal light provided by the headlamp on the rover. And we can also do whatever this is. But yeah, second rover, pretty successful. I'm going to come away from it now. Alright, and so now just placing the relay satellite into its orbit. Exact same as before, except I'm actually going for a different orbit because, again, I just want to hopefully ensure that most of the time there will at least be a relay satellite in communications range of each rover. Again, we can deploy the equipment on it. And so next up is rover and relay satellite 3. And I'm currently messing with the camera there. And I decided I'm going to put these two craft in a different orbit in order to first vary up the relay satellite orbits and to get access to some more varied landing sites for the rover. And the relay satellite has plenty of Delta V. The core of it is a monopropellant tank, and the engine it uses is a monopropellant engine from a near-future spacecraft. And so now we can deorbit the rover. Again, aiming for a flattish looking site. And we can descend and run out of fuel. Yeah, I didn't save enough fuel, and I have no idea why the fuel level, I don't know why this was the only landing where that occurred, but again, rover was perfectly fine. So we can deploy the systems of it, and drive over to this scannable crater. Because we have a breaking ground scanning arm on this. Then we can park up next to a rock, or crater, and deploy our scanning arm. Ignoring how it completely clips that wheel, it can go over and scan the crater. I felt that that needed to be the main focus of the audio, as I feel like the audio, like sound design of the breaking ground parts is it's not really discussed nowadays. So yeah, third rover and third satellite, very successful. And so it's time for our final rover and satellite. And I'm actually going to detach the rover before detaching the satellite, as I have some extra plans for that final satellite. And so, for a normal descent, I'm going for a hilly looking region. And during this descent, wait, so the descents we had were not nominal descent, and basically forgetfulness descent, and lack of fuel. I have no idea where I was going with that. Basically, yeah, no, one of the engines failed on this, and oh, we still have plenty of a thrust-to-weight ratio and can land somewhat softly. And so, I'm actually doing this from the perspective of the camera on the rover, and we can drive off of the landing stage and look back at the wreckage. A moment now. There we go. And again, there's another crater that's nearby. So we can scan it. This time from the perspective of the camera. And again, instead of being a bit quiet for the interesting audio of this. Alright, and so it's now time for the final relay satellite, which I'm actually going to use the second stage to boost it into a higher orbit. I initially was going to use only the RCS, however, it really doesn't matter at this point if the main engine fails. So any moment now, I'll start up the main engine. Any moment now. There we go. And so the first burn gets completed nominally. And we can time warp up to our second burn. And complete that pretty quickly. Again, using the main engine. And from there, I wanted to deorbit the upper stage, because I decided I did want to leave it lying around. However, that did not go according to plan, and the engine failed. So yeah, now that stage is permanently just sitting in on orbit. But we can anyways detach the relay satellite and deploy its systems. So we've set up a pretty interesting comm network, again with the philosophy of put random satellites and hope it works. And so, yeah, I want to thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and goodbye.